over to Alison Donnellan, Program Executive with SEAI Business Supports. Hi, Ali.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nicole. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for attending our business briefing today. As Nicole said, my name is Alison Donlan, and I'm the Program Executive on our Business Supports team here at SAI, and your host for this morning. We're delighted to have so many of you here today, and we hope that you find today to be an informative session. The purpose of today's briefing is to provide you with an overview of the educational and the financial supports that are available to SMEs that want to become more energy efficient and to take those steps to become a low carbon business. So without further ado, we'll just do some housekeeping, if I can. Perfect. So this event will be recorded and all attendees are muted with your cameras off, but we will be having a Q&A at the end of today's session. And we will endeavour to answer all of your questions, but if there's any questions that we can't answer at today's briefing, I will be doing an FAQ sheet and I'll be sharing it with all attendees along with a copy of today's slides. I'm joined today by a number of my colleagues from SEAI. So I have joined by my colleague Kevin Quinn, David Fitzmaurice, Nicoline Leth and Saoirse Brophy, who will all be talking about the financial supports that are available for SMEs to help them to become more energy efficient. We're also joined by Brian Colgan from the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, and Brian will be talking about the financial sustainability supports that SBCI offer out to businesses. As I said, we'll also be ending today with a Q&A. You can submit any questions throughout today's webinar, and we will endeavour to answer them. So without much further ado, I'll get started. So we understand at SEAI that taking the initial steps to becoming a low carbon business can be quite daunting. So we've really tried to streamline it and make it as easy as possible for SMEs. So we've broken it down into 3 simple steps: understand, assess, and invest. So first step for you on your energy efficiency journey is to understand your energy use, because you can't reduce your energy use until you understand how much energy your business is using. What you can't measure, you can't manage. Once you understand your energy use, we then recommend that you assess your business's energy use, and you do that through completing an energy audit. An energy audit is basically a deep dive of your business's energy consumption, and it will also help you identify the actions that you can take to then become a more energy efficient business and to take those steps to become a low carbon business. We would then recommend that you invest in your energy efficiency and renewables. So it's not until those first 2 steps are really ironed out when we ever recommend that you'd make any sort of investments in energy efficiency measures. We have a number of supports that are available to help you along these 3 steps. The purpose of my presentation today will be really to take you through the understand and the assess steps on the energy efficiency journey, and then my colleagues will be talking about the investment opportunities that are available to SMEs to help them to become low carbon businesses. So as I said, understanding your energy use is the first step on your energy efficiency journey, and that is why we have the Energy Academy, which is a free e-learning platform designed for businesses to understand their energy use and reduce their energy use. It is available 24/7 at a time that is convenient for you. We encourage operational managers and CEOs to join the Energy Academy, but really it's applicable to all staff. It's really great for businesses to roll it out to all staff as part of sustainability training. We have over 30 modules available on the Energy Academy, from covering topics such as energy and climate change to office energy efficiency, decarbonisation for business, to then more specific things like introduction to electric vehicles, solar PV, eco driving. We also, as well, if you're from the hospitality sector, we recently launched a energy efficiency for hotels module that is really great. And we also have over 20 courses that are available for businesses. So courses would be a collection of about 4 to 8 modules, and we have sector-specific ones. So if you're from the retail sector, from manufacturing, hospitality, we have specific courses applicable to you. You can save up to 10% on your energy use through behavioural change techniques, and you will learn these techniques on the Energy Academy. So if you haven't already joined, I would definitely recommend you register today. The Energy Academy can help businesses in a number of ways. So the first thing it is free practical training for your staff. It's business-focused training, which can really help boosting staff morale and helping with retention, which I know is a big issue in the industry. It will also improve your brand image. So customers nowadays really want to make sure that the businesses they're going to are taking those steps to reducing their carbon impact. And when you complete a course on the Energy Academy, you'll receive a certificate of completion. You can print off that certificate. You can have it on your website. You can also have it on your door. So you're showing your customers that you are taking those steps towards reducing your carbon impact. The Energy Academy will help you also discover opportunities to reduce your energy use and save across all areas of your business and your home. It'll also help you reduce your energy waste and improve your reduce your carbon footprint. So once you understand your energy use, the next step is then to create your energy action plan. So that is why we have our Introduction to Energy Management training. This is a free trainer-led workshop in which you embed good energy management practices. It is led by an energy expert, and they will take you through the 6 steps to create your energy action plan. And as part of that, you'll also receive a free energy management guide and workbook. Energy management, it's like having an accountant for your energy. You know, you have someone to manage your finances, you also need to be able to manage your energy. This energy management training is such a good resource. It's not only that, you also are going to have, 2-hour FaceTime with an energy expert where you can ask them all your queries. You'll also meet a number of SMEs who are on a similar journey as yourself, and you can, swap tips and tricks. So if you haven't signed up for this training, I would definitely recommend that you do. We run it once a month. It's online. You can check out our ticket tailor page for our next available workshop. The next one is on Thursday, the 15th of August, which I think is in about 3 weeks. And there's still spaces available, so definitely recommend that you sign up. So once you understand your energy use, it is then time to assess your energy use. So at SEAI, we have the support scheme for energy audits, which is basically a €2,000 voucher for a high quality energy audit. This has to be with an SEAI registered energy auditor. We have a list of our registered energy auditors on our website, and they're done by region. So wherever you are in the country, you can find an energy auditor in your area. Again, we have made this as easy and accessible as possible for businesses. So it's become very streamlined. To be eligible, you just need to be an SME and you need to spend at least 10,000 a year on energy. The approval process is immediate. You apply online, and once you're approved, if you're eligible, you're then approved. You can then set up your meeting with your auditor, and then you can organize for them to come and do your site visits. They'll come and do a half a day or a day visit, and then they'll be incentivized to get their audit report back to you as soon as possible, because they're not going to get their voucher until they send you the report. And as I said, an energy audit is a deep dive of your business's energy consumption. It's basically like a blueprint for the next steps you really need to take for your energy efficiency journey. The energy audit is going to help you identify the equipment and the processes that are using the most energy, and then how you can streamline those processes to reduce that. It's also going to then have the recommended actions that you should take to save energy and the estimated cost and impact. And we'll also have the SEAI supports that are available to help you to make those energy efficiency upgrades and renewables. So as I said, the third step then is to invest in your energy efficiency and renewables. And my colleague Kevin is going to now talk to you about our non-domestic microgeneration scheme, which is our solar PV scheme. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Kevin.
Thanks, Ali. I'll just attempt to take control there, and if it doesn't work, you can just go through the slides for me. So you can let me know if that's working.
I didn't get the.
And if you're having any trouble, is that working? Yeah.
It's
okay. I mean, you can. No, that's fine. You can just go through the slides for me then, if that's the case.
Perfect.
Thanks everyone for joining us this morning again. My name's Kevin, and I manage the non-domestic microgen scheme, the NGMG scheme, if anybody's familiar with it. If you're having any difficulty hearing me at all on my mic, I can try and adjust that. Just let me know. You can move on to the next slide there, please, Ali. Can you hear me okay, yeah? Brilliant.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
So just to give, brilliant. So just to give everyone a sort of a brief history of this particular scheme and what it entails. It was born out of a minister announcement back in December 21, and then it was launched in September 22, and then subsequently updated in July 23. We had a smaller scheme of a 6 kilowatt peak back in September 22, which had a lot less intake from delegates or applicants. So we upgraded that to 1 megawatt, which has increased the applicants coming into that particular scheme. So there's no BER threshold or requirement to have a BER assessment on this particular scheme, which makes it a little easier, and it's somewhat different to the non-domestic scheme that we have, or sorry, the domestic scheme that we have running as well. It reflects a lot of what happens in the domestic scheme, but it's obviously applicable only to commercial businesses. So it's available to all pre-2021 buildings, and as mentioned, it's separate entirely to the domestic scheme. And there's this clean export guarantee available also, but that's something that you have to agree with your utility provider to sell back the electricity that you'll be generating with this particular scheme. Next slide there, please, Ellie. I don't see that moving on just yet. Thank you. So these are just some of the initial high-level scheme parameters. So again, it's just for the installation of solar PV. It deals only with that particular tech, which makes it somewhat easier for my management. Thankfully, it has a grant maximum grant value of 162.6k, and there are grant scales, which I'll show you in a moment, that bring it up to a maximum of 1 megawatt. So anything beyond 1 megawatt will receive the maximum grant value of 162.6k. Next slide, please, Ellie. Yep, so these are just some of the changes that we had between the initial scheme and the existing scheme as it stands today. It just gives you an idea of what our maximum grant values are and what are the outputs for the particular systems that you can install. So again, as mentioned, it was a much smaller scheme back in September 22, but it was increased substantially then in July 23. So we've seen a lot more uptake in that in the scheme, thankfully, since then. Next slide, Ali, thanks. So those are the grant amounts, the scaling for the grant amounts leading up to 162.6k grant value. So it doubles up to 2 kilowatts, and then it increases by 300 then up to 4 kilowatts, and then it levels out at 2.4 euro up to 6 kilowatt. And then after that, that's where we would have stopped previously. But then when we increased it, we have additional scales that bring it all the way up to a potential of a maximum of 162.6k. Next slide, please, Ellie. That's just moving slowly, I think. Unless it's a delay on my side, is it? Yep, thanks. This is the applicant journey, just to give you an idea, just outlines the sort of journey an applicant will go through. I just want to sort of break that down slightly for each of the steps that you have to take. So the emphasis is on the applicant in this particular case, which is somewhat different to the domestic scheme. The emphasis is not on the company or the contractor that you appoint, it's with the applicant. So the applicant creates the application, selects a company or contractor for install, and then both the applicant and the company will then receive a notification that an application is in process. So there's a requirement then to have a contractual agreement between the applicant and the contractor. So we then issue an LOO, a letter of offer, and that has a date, which is significant because all work must occur on or after that date. And then all work that's installed must match what's on the letter of offer. So also as mentioned, it's somewhat simplified in that there's no BER requirement before or after. Then it's designed then that the applicant uploads all of the documentation as soon as possible. So both parties, the contractor and the applicant, are incentivized to get that documentation uploaded as soon as possible, with the aim of getting it uploaded within 3 days of the final install. Now that's designed so that we can then begin to process the grant payment. So we will only start doing that once all of that documentation is uploaded. And then typically there's a 4 to 6 week turnaround from getting all of that documentation uploaded to us paying out the grant. Now that can be sometimes extended depending on whether it's called for inspection or not. And if there is a call for inspection, then that timeline will obviously be longer. We have sort of an average of 1.5 to 2 months for inspections. Now that can be sometimes as quick as 1 or 2 weeks, or it can be 1.5 to 2 months, as I say, depending on what their workload is with on-site inspections. But typically we have a 4 to 6 week turnaround from receiving all of the documentation to receiving the grant payment to the applicant. There's an 8-month expiry on the letter of offer, and I just want to emphasize that quickly just before I move on from it, because sometimes, in some instances, we've had applicants that have issues with ESB connections, and as some delegates might appreciate, waiting times with the ESB can be somewhat long for connections, but just to emphasize that we can extend that expiry date beyond the 8 months just to accommodate things like ESB connections. So I don't want anybody to be worried about the fact that they might think that their grant will be declined or not paid because that 8-month expiry is coming to an end. We can work with the applicant to ensure we can, help the connection dates with the ESB, for example. That's outside our control, of course. So just to emphasize that 8-month expiry date on the letter of offer. Next slide, please, Ali. Okay, these are just some of the T's and C's. If you can move on to the next slide again. Yeah, just some of the T's and C's for the scheme. So again, the emphasis is on the business owner, the applicant for the application. It must be made by the premises owner. We've had some instances, rare instances, where the application is controlled by the contractor. That can't be done. That's against some of the stipulations of the scheme. So it must be by the premises owner. The applicant has to take control of the application, and that's of course to protect the applicant as well as public money. So the emphasis again is with the applicant, not with the contractor. The year of construction must be pre-21. The grant amounts are fixed. We don't have any leeway on those. You can refer back to those. This information will be shared with the delegates in this call. The grant approval must be in place before the works commence. So the LLO has a date on it, and no work can commence before that date. So it has to be on or after that date. Works must commence after that in order to be eligible. There's one grant per MPRN. The scheme is somewhat controlled by the MPRN number, which is quite a good way of managing that, or policing it, because it's one MPRN number, one application. You can't have two applications for one MPRN number. So if that MPRN number has been used on a previous application, that application must be cancelled or expired before we can release that MPRN number for a new application. So again, the companies aren't permitted to make any applications. They can't submit the applications on behalf of the applicants. It's important to stress that it has to be with the applicant. And then, of course, the work must comply with our usual T's and C's, technical standards, specification documents, and then our code of practice also, all of which is on our website. You can refer to all of that within the information that we have on our website, our public website. So next slide, please, Ali. So these are just some disclaimers really we have for planning, and we also have one for the ESB that I mentioned as well. The guidelines for planning, they're available on our website as well. You can refer to all of those as well. I haven't come across any instances where the planning department will kick back with a solar PV install, so I don't think anybody really has to be concerned about that. But as I said, this is sort of a disclaimer from our side because we don't have control, obviously, over planning law or ESB connection times and such. So you can refer to those. We have lots of guidance on the planning laws, so it's important to be aware of those. Next slide, please, Ali. Yeah, in a similar vein, the ESB, we don't have control over that, so it's important that delegates are aware of the fact that ESB connection times can take somewhat longer than the 8 months that I mentioned earlier. So again, this is a sort of a disclaimer on our part. We don't have control over that, so it's a third party. Those NC5 forms 6, 7, and 8, I just want to stress those briefly. We have had some instances where those NC forms have not been completed properly or sufficiently, or they haven't been supplied. It's important to stress that those forms must be in place, and it's sort of a housekeeping rule that I'm just emphasising, because if we don't have all of the documentation in place during our checks, during our inspections, during our documentation inspections, we tend to send them back to be rectified. So it's important that the applicants ensure that their contractor is uploading all of those relevant documents correctly. In this case, the NC forms for the ESB connections, because I have come across a couple of instances where that has happened and we've had to send them back. It doesn't mean you're not going to get your grant ultimately. It just means that there's a delay in payment. So it's important just to be on top of those sort of housekeeping items to ensure that your contractor is uploading everything correctly. Next slide, please, Ali. Okay, and finally, this is just an applicant sample, just to give you an idea of sort of the sort of applicants that are coming through the system at the moment, or through this particular scheme. We have a lot of uptake now since it was upgraded to 1 megawatt. Most delegates will fall into the commercial business sector. and maybe retail. But again, this is just to give you an idea of the sort of applications that we have coming through and the total commitment we have on the scheme. So it's quite a popular scheme. So I would encourage anyone that's in a position to get on board this scheme to make an application. And that's all I have really for that. And I'll be handed over to my colleague David Fitzmaurice now, and he'll take you through the support scheme for renewable heat programme.
Hi guys, so I'm going to talk you through the support scheme for renewable heat. So the support scheme for renewable heat is a hybrid scheme, so it can be broken into two parts, so investment aid grant scheme or the operational aid tariff scheme. It provides financial incentive to replace fossil fuel heating systems with heat pumps or biomass or biogas systems. It is ideally suited to non-domestic or public sector businesses that are currently using fossil fuels. So switching to renewable heating can deliver both a reduction in energy costs and carbon emissions. The scheme is fully open for applications on the SEAI's webpage, and it was enhanced in 2023 to incorporate energy-related measures. Oh, I think we've skipped here, sorry. Yeah, so the investment aid grant scheme. So the investment aid is a grant up to 40% for heat pumps, which are air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, or water source heat pump. The grant percentage is based on the SCOP or the COP of the proposed heat pump. There is an inclusion for support for related energy efficient measures at 30%. So this includes measures such as air tightness, etc. Just to note that the maximum support can be offered to any one project is €1 million. This slide is showing how the heat pump grant scales with the SCOP. As you can see, the higher the SCOP or COP goals, the greater the grant aid will be given, up to a maximum of 40%. Points to consider on the investment aid grant scheme. So do you have eligible heat? So, are you doing space heating, hot water heating, or process heating? We do not support heating of open spaces, for example, swimming pools, and we also don't support wood fuel drying or electrical generation. So all equipment must be purchased and installed after receiving the letter of offer, and the scheme cannot be used to meet renewable heat that is mandated by regulations such as Part L regulations. Costs can be categorized into three sections: equipment, which is the heat pump, and related equipment such as heat emitters, pipe work, buffer vessels, heat exchangers, circulation pumps, etc. External labor can also be accounted for, which is the cost of labor that will be incurred for the project. And the applicant may go for external project management, which is 7% of the combined totals of the equipment and labor costs. Now, the operational aid tariff scheme is an operational aid based on the eligible heat use. So this is directed specifically for biomass heating systems and anaerobic digestion heating systems. It is a tariff that is tiered. So as you go up the tiers or the more heat output you use, the tariff does decrease. It is ongoing for 15 years and is paid quarterly every year. The biomass tariff support is up to 3.5 million maximum over the 15 years. It is suitable for ESCO model businesses. And just to note, an annual heat cap will be set based on analysis of the current energy usage or heat usage of the building or process. Capital costs are not evaluated as part of the operating aid. This slide here just gives you an example of the tiers. As you can see, the higher tiers, the less amount of money you will get for the kilowatt hour unit. Points to consider on the operational aid: eligible heat. So again, it's space heating, hot water heating, or process heating. And again, we won't support open heating open spaces or wood fuel drying or electrical generation. Now, all equipment must be purchased again after and installed after the receipt of a letter of offer. And it is very important that all the metering guidelines are met. Over the 15 years, the applicant will have to do ongoing obligations, and they may get periodic inspections as well. So I'm just going to run you through just making an application, and I'm going to just use the grant process to go through. The grant process and the tariff process are very similar to each other. So we can break it into 5 parts, which is application stage, installation stage, completion stage, inspection, and governance. So at application stage, you're scoping the project. Is it eligible? Is it viable? You would seek design engineer advice at that stage. You would then make the application, and this would then be evaluated. And once approved, you would receive letter of offer. You would then move to the installation stage. So you have 18 months from letter of offer to complete the project. So, and just note for the grant aid, if you're at 50% completion, you can request the first stage payment. So after installation, you move to the completion stage where you just prepare your completion documentation and submit it in for evaluation again. This can take a bit of time, up to 2 months, and it would then go to inspection, where they would inspect the site, see if it's okay, if there's reworks that would have to be done or anything like that. But after that, it would go to governance, where it would do their final checks, such as banking statements, invoicing, and finally do their final pay. Finally, you can request your final payment. Just to note, when making an application, please consult with the scheme guidelines. And if you have any queries or anything, please message the SSRH at SEAI.ie. And if you're any doubt or anything, please, we are open to pre-consultation meetings. Just in timelines from application date to letter of offer date, it's usually about 6 weeks. And for larger projects that are requesting over 100,000 in grant aid, or where more information is required, this can take a bit longer. On this slide, this is just showing you the active applications in the SSRH at the moment. As you can see, there are a wide variety of sectors in it, most notably agriculture. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Nicoline Lett, and to talk about electrical vehicle supports.
And perfect. Hello, my name is Nicoline, and I'm program executive on our EV grants program. And I'm going to talk a bit about electric vehicles. But I'd actually like to start talking of the terminology of electric vehicles, because I think what often happens, at least for me personally, is that when I say electric vehicle, I'm referring to what's officially a battery electric vehicle, the vehicle that only has a battery motor and can only be driven through this. But it's important to bear in mind that there is also other types of electric vehicles. It's getting increasingly popular is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, or the PHEV in short, which have both a battery motor and an internal combustion engine using either diesel or petrol. So it can kind of do both. And then what is sometimes forgotten is there's also just a hybrid electric vehicle, just to keep it confusing, the HEV. This one doesn't have the plug-in option, but it has a smaller battery in it that charges when you're using the vehicle, so the engine. So that makes it a more energy efficient vehicle, but it still have tailpipe emissions because you're still using diesel and petrol in it. And it's safe to say that I think there comes a hierarchy when we're talking of these electric vehicles to which one is best for the environment or less emitting, with the battery electric vehicle being the less, because it's the only one that has no tailpipe emissions of this. But it's just important to bear in mind when I go through the different kinds of support, because it can get a bit confusing. But first, importantly, is to talk about why we at SEAI is working for to promote and encourage you to get EVs. And it comes down to the climate action plan that has some targets. That's in 2030, we're supposed to have reduced our transport emissions in Ireland by 51%. It's quite extraordinary high number. If we translate that into the targets there is specifically for electric vehicles, they're saying that in 2030 we should have 840,000 passenger EVs on the road. This includes BEVs as well. If we go back to the terminology, I think that surprises people, but it's both BEV and BEVs, not HEVs. And on the commercial side, we need to have 95,000 light commercial vehicles on the roads. So we have a way to go for the next 6 years. And then it's of course interesting to look at where are we today. And currently there is in Ireland over 131,000 electric vehicles on the road. This includes, again, BEVs and FEVs because it's counting towards the targets. And here in SEAI, we do a lot to try to promote that. And the main thing is the grant supports, which I'm going to talk to a bit more about. But it's just to put some numbers into perspective about it. Last year, we grant aided 16,000 vehicles through our grant support. And this equals to 75 million euros in grant payments in 2023. So it's quite substantial movements going on in that electric vehicle space at the moment. But of course, not just why do we work with electric vehicles? It's important to look at why should you change to electric vehicles, or why would we encourage you to do it? And the first point here is really on the cost side of things, because I think a lot of people get scared that electric vehicles have a high upfront cost. They are rather expensive. I think depending on the model these days, because the prices are dropping, and I had a colleague making some calculations that shows that on certain types of vehicles, the prices on the EVs today are actually very competitive. But we understand that this is not across the board. But what is very positive about the electric vehicles is that they're actually very low to run. So the running costs are very low. It's way cheaper to charge your electric vehicle than to put diesel or petrol into a car. So you save a lot of money on the fuel sides. Also on the maintenance sides, it's cheaper to do maintenance on an electric vehicle simply because it got less moving parts in it. So you don't need to do as much service on it. And then I'm going to talk a bit more about the financial incentives we put in place to put it down. I'm not going to talk more about the accelerated capital allowances. It's not really my table, but it's just also to bear in mind that there is this, if the car is on the EEE register, you can actually buy it off straight off your profits before you pay off your taxes. So it's also a way to make it cheaper. And I think in this, there might include some HEVs as well, because it's focusing on energy efficiency. But yeah, second point of this is, of course, as well, it could be great for you to change due to the positive brand image it would give. As Ali was talking about early on, customers are really starting to request that, and you probably know that way better than us, depending on your business, where your customers are. And to have an EV is really driving around showing that positive brand image off. And of course, some of you might also just be happy to know that it would reduce your emissions if you're changing to EV. Not only the tailpipe emissions will go down, but you would also have reduced noise pollution, and you're supporting the increased use of renewable energy. So a lot of good things about that. And then to the actual, in how do we then support it and try to make it easier for you to do this switch? A lot of you might have heard also about the passenger car grant. I haven't put it on here because it's not eligible for companies. But for companies, there is a grant for vans, both one for a smaller van, that's 3,800 euros, and one for larger panel vans, that's 7,600 euros. It's a 3.5 ton vans. And it's important to stress that this is only the battery electric vehicles, so the fully electric vehicles. A lot of other incentives are out there than just what we do in SEAI. I can say on the grant side, it's actually very easy for you guys because all the application process go through the dealerships. They handle it all. So there's not really much for you to do rather than going down and purchase the vehicle. But there is also other financial incentives out there, not managed by SEAI. It's the VRT reliefs. I know there is a flat rate for vans, but for the passenger cars, they have the lowest rate of VRT of 7%. And there is even VRT relief. So if your car is less than 40,000 euros, there is currently 0 VRT. And between 40 and 50, there is some VRT, but it's lower. There's also benefit in kind reduction. So currently, this was actually extended. So currently, you pay 0% on the first 45K of the vehicle. This is reducing, so I think it will be 35 next year, then it will be 20, and then 2027 it will be 10,000 before it's fully gone. But yeah, it's very positive that that was extended. And the final point is the lower motor tax. You only pay 120 euros a year. This is the cheapest tax. So a lot is being done to try to make it affordable to switch over to these EVs. And it's just to make you aware of that. And I think my final slide here is then on considerations before you buy, because I think it's very important to stress that it's important to assess your driving needs and understand that before you go out and purchase a vehicle. The last thing we want is that you don't do it and then you have a really bad experience in an EV and you tell everybody about it, and then we just have one more bad story about an EV out there. Because it's really about understanding your driving needs. First of all, of course, understand how much are you driving, and what we see is a lot of people are actually overestimating this. It's why we like to encourage people to use telematics, get the data out there on your vehicles to understand how much you're driving, how often are you doing those drives, and then again talk to your drivers, because they're really the ones that should promote this and have the experience with it. Some might be more equipped to do the switch than others. I haven't talked about all the charging stuff because my colleague is going to do that in a second, but it's just very important to stress, also understand those aspects of it, because that is different from other vehicles. So you need to do your homework in those aspects. We have a total cost of ownership calculator on our webpage that can actually make you calculate what is your total cost of ownership of these different types of vehicles. You can go out and test drive these vehicles. I think it's very easy these days. So it's just to understand all these things you can do to get the right EV for your needs, because that's really the most important thing. You get the one that has the right payload and the right range and the right price for your needs. And on the bottom page, I put here that you should visit drivingelectric.ie. It would put you straight to our webpage. It is currently being updated, so especially on the fleet side of it. So I think in a couple of months, we'll have some new fleet content in there, which can help you on this journey, because it is a journey, and we understand that. And I think that was all from my stand, and I'll hand you over to my colleague, Sorcha Brophy, to take you through the infrastructure part.
Thanks, Nicoline. Excuse me. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Sorcha. I'm a program executive with the charging infrastructure and policy. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit about charging infrastructure. If I can get the slides to work.
I think if you just go.
There we go. Okay. Thanks, Ali. So now that you've made the purchase of an EV, or perhaps you're still thinking about it, but now you need to think about your charging. How are you going to charge your car? So there's two categories of charging. There's AC charging and DC charging. So AC charging is the slower type of charging. It's associated with your home, or destination charging like a hotel, a shopping center, a cinema, or on-street charging either. So it is slower. For about 100 kilometers, it'll take you approximately 2 to 3 hours to charge, but it is the cheaper. So for example, at home with the time of use tariff, you could get 100 kilometers for just about €2. Very good value. And then if we look in contrast to the DC charging, which is the fast or rapid charging, it's much faster. And this is what you'll find in motorway service stations or public car parks. And in comparison, for the 100 kilometers, you'll get that in 25 minutes, depending on your type of car, the onboard charger, and the charger itself. It can be a little bit expensive present. However, if you know the routes that you're taking, you're doing it consistently, there are many providers and they're all providing the service at different prices, and you can shop around and find out which is the best value for you and the driving that you're doing and the charging that you need to do to facilitate your driving. So if you want to know a little bit more about charging more than that, we do have a series of blogs called Charging Essentials. You'll find it on our website. It's well worth a read. It's a series of 3. So the first one covers the home charging, the second one is the neighborhood destination charging, and the third one then is the en route charging. It's the fast or rapid. And it has quite a bit of detail in that if you want to have a look at those. So we do have some supports available for EV charging. So we have the home charger program. Every homeowner is eligible for a €300 grant support if they're eligible. Any homeowner can apply. If you have a second-hand EV or you have no EV at all, you can still apply for it. There are some certain terms and conditions that do apply. You have to have off-street parking and a driveway. And the other caveat is that you must use a charger from our smart charger register. The register is on our website. You can have a look through, see which ones are on it and which ones might suit you best. The application form is online. It's all very straightforward and it'll be done very quickly. We also have the apartment charging program. This assists residents and owners of apartments or other multi-unit developments who want to install a charger, but they're not covered by the pre-existing grants. And it's designed more for bulk installation at one location. And the grant will support the infrastructure, such as cabling, labour, construction costs. The level of grant awarded depends on who's applying for it. So it could be between 60 to 90% of the infrastructure costs, depending if you are in an OMC, an owner management company, it could be a housing body, a local authority, or commercial and private landlords. All of them can apply. If you're not sure if you fit within that criteria, you can contact us to double check, evchargers@seai.ie. So there are some other grants available as well. Zevi are looking after the Shared Ireland Sports Scheme that provides funding to install a network of public accessible chargers at communities through a local sports club that is subject to certain criteria. Also the EU Just Transition Fund, Communities Facilities EV Charging Scheme. This is to provide fast charging point infrastructure at facilities including community centres, public libraries, recreational facilities, and that is just available for territories across the Just Transition. And then lastly, the LDV scheme, the Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Light Duty Vehicle En Route Grant Scheme. That is one of a number of schemes planned under the National Roads EV Charging Network Plan. And the aim of that is to see chargers installed every 60 kilometres on major roads, and it's expected to be followed by a second scheme before the end of the year to target the main national road network. These are all due online by December 25. So at the moment, applications aren't open these, but information will be released in due course. So there are lots of supports coming online to support the rapid expansion of our EV infrastructure network. On top of that, I just thought I'd mention just very briefly about the other plans in place to expand the network. The draft regional and local EV charging network plan has just finished its consultation, and that's to standardise an approach for local authorities to develop regional and local strategies to promote the efficient rollout of charging infrastructure, and this will complement the wider national road network EV charging plan. So I hope that's been informative and useful for you. Knowing a little bit more about charging, I would direct you towards our website. We have a lot of information on the EV charging page and also drivingelectric.ie, and do read our blogs, Charging Essentials, if you do get a chance. And I'm going to pass on now to Brian Colgan, and he will be talking to you about financial sustainability supports. Thanks very much.
Hi folks, you're very welcome to this presentation on the Growth and Sustainability Loan Scheme. My name is Brian Colgan. I'm a Product Development Manager with the SBCI. So, just move this on now. It'll go for me. Okay, a little bit about this scheme. So, this scheme is a scheme that runs on from a previous scheme we had called the Future Growth Loan Scheme, which was addressing the investment needs of SMEs and small mid-caps. This one has a much bigger emphasis on green or sustainability. So some of the features of this scheme is you can see here, so there's a very wide range of loan amounts that are available, up to 3 million from 25,000. It's unsecured up to $500,000. So for SMEs that are collateral light, because of the nature of their business, this is very helpful. Repayment terms between 7 and 10 years. Again, very helpful. Sometimes getting longer term finance for SMEs can be difficult in the Irish market, and this is addressing this market gap. There is a reduced interest rate on this scheme from what you would normally borrow at, from, because it's reflecting the value of the guarantee that we give to the banks for this scheme, but also for those loans that are for sustainability. There's a further 25 basis points reduction, and the scheme is available up to the 30th of June 26th. So loan purposes. So the scheme is designed for cover a very broad range of loan purposes, from intangible assets, tangible assets, climate action, setting up new establishments, covers a lot in the agri world, changes in production processes. So it really is designed to cover as broad a range of investments as is possible. So just looking at the greener side, sustainability side. So how can you qualify under this? Well, you may be a green SME, and a green SME has a very particular definition. So 90% of revenues would be in areas under the climate action and environmental sustainability sectors as defined by the scheme. So areas like renewable energy, energy efficiency, circular economy, waste prevention and recycling. So these are our businesses who are involved in that, may qualify as a green enterprise. And we have been very pleasantly surprised with the amount of green enterprise that have been coming through the scheme. In the farming world, you can qualify as a green enterprise if you are a registered organic farmer, or you're a member of the Acre scheme and also the Bord Bia Origin Green programme. This is a novelty for Ireland. It's not anywhere else in Europe. It's very Irish-centric. And just as a remark, the European Commission and European Investment Bank they're sort of really sort of amazed with the quality of the programs that the Department of Agriculture run in this country. They're really strong, and they were very happy to give this sort of derogation for the Acres and Origin Green program. SMEs would normally come in if they're going to do a sustainability loan in one of these green measures. And it's a very broad range of investments covered here. Covers things like, insulation, replacement of windows, lighting, electric vehicles, charging points, in the manufacturing of that equipment. And in the agri world, minimum tillage equipment, tractor and harvester replacement, etc. We're always adding to these measures when we can. In fact, this week, I think we're going to be adding commercial refrigeration, which is obviously important for retail and for hospitality, some measures for construction equipment, and in the agri world around nutrition storage and essentially manure management on farms. So here are some of the type of things I just discussed there. So mobility and transport, which obviously a big interest to Irish SMEs, because we obviously have to transport goods around. Renewable energy generation. So we sort of had that earlier on, I think, with Kevin and David talking about some of these issues, energy efficiency, etc. Right. So let's move on. If it will. Ali, can you get it to move?
Just trying here now. It's not seeming. Oh, there we go.
Here we go. Right, thank you. So these are sort of not an exhaustive list of the type of green measures that are available. So basement and ground floor insulation, shading devices, probably not as relevant in Ireland, roof insulation, wall insulation, air conditioner replacement. You can see all the list there. So it's very, very broad. show you again now. See, Ali, can you shift on again? Yeah, here we go. In industry, compressor replacement, electric motor replacement, renewable energy storage systems, solar photovoltaic systems, wind turbines, and the manufacturing of any of these, so mobility as well. So, you know, as I say, we are constantly adding to these. Behind all these measures, there's an algorithm that the European Investment Bank are putting together that captures all the savings, the CO2 savings behind these, which means that as we add measures, they're all sort of proven measures. So from a Ireland Inc. perspective, in terms of measuring and meeting our commitments, is a very useful scheme. So I'll just go on again, please. So here we are. We've seen some of the stuff we have done. Solar panels in the agri world and in the commercial world, and I have an example just a couple of slides on that very useful sort of application of this. So see, can I move on now? So see a green eco label farmer. Just go back one, please. So, you know, mixed farmer that has an Origin Green and Acres registration, and, you know, can do a number of investments under this, you know, energy saving along with traditional agricultural machinery, because they have this green farmer designation. Next, please. Same here with somebody running a horticultural business. So investment in rainwater harvesting, a new greenhouse structure utilizing solar energy, and this is getting popular in this type of agriculture. And again, will qualify because of their organic as a green SME. Next, please. Food business, big energy footprint, and, you know, a combination of energy saving equipment and retrofitting parts facility. So these are sort of typical type of investments that people have been making using this scheme. So next slide, please. So this is a case study for a company called Adams Tralee, big Hyundai dealer in Tralee, and basically they have put a lot of solar on their roof. Payback period was, the sort of calculations that they were seeing was around 7 years. It's actually running closer to 4 years in this case, and they've been able to use sort of it as a marketing ploy, if you like, and also they're offering things like free charging to get a service, and, you know, they're able to do this in a really cost-effective way because of solar. So, you know, not alone is it cheaper, but can also offer, you know, other benefits to a company to demonstrate their sort of green criteria that they're applying in their business. So this has worked out really well. They're getting an awful lot of coverage from this. So next, please. How do you apply? It's pretty simple. Onto the SBCI website. It's a digital application through the hub. Some very basic information. The business sector from using the NACE code, so we know which state aid treatment to apply to it. Description of what you're doing, and an identification number, so, you know, VAT number or the company registration number. If you're a green SME, somebody who has 90% of their turnover in a green sector, just an external accountant just has to verify that. Next, please. And this is what the hub looks like. It's really, really quick to do this, and you get a eligibility code, you know, within hours, maximum 24 hours. Now, just to be said, This is not a credit approval. This is just saying you're eligible for the scheme. What you do then is you bring the eligibility code to one of the on-lenders that are involved in the scheme, which are all the normal banks and some non-bank on-lenders as well. So next, please. Just wanted to mention this scheme. So this is a consumer scheme that we're doing, and really what I mentioned is that there could be people involved in the supply chain from the SME world, and also maybe from a person's perspective that you might want to do upgrades on your own home. So this scheme, which is sort of newly launched, covers loans from 5 to 75k, 1 to 10 years, again with this repayment capacity that allows people meet the repayments over as long a period of time as we can, as possible, and interest rates from 3%, and that's available up to December 26. And as I said, it's a consumer scheme, but you may be involved in the supply chain, or indeed personally may be interested in this. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll just hand back to Ali.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you very much to all our panelists here today. Hope you found this session to be informative. So we're now going to move to the Q&A part of the webinar. I don't know if there has been many questions I haven't been able to see. Oh, there has been quite a few. I should go from the start. Okay. So I have a question here. How much does an energy audit usually cost? So that's a great question. So it is usually for an SME, it's going to be around €2,000. So our voucher scheme should cover the cost. It should only be a small percentage more depending on the size of the premise, but it should be should cover that. And the next question is there non-domestic microgeneration available for purchase power agreements from businesses without suitable space for their own solar PV system? So if I could, Kevin, if you could be able to weigh in.
Yeah, just give that again, Ali, sorry.
So for the non-domestic microgeneration scheme available for purchase power agreements from businesses without a suitable space for their own solar PV system.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not going to try and
question.
I'll maybe do some homework on that, and then I can maybe take the delegates' contact details and get them an answer. But I don't have an answer in the immediate for that, I'm afraid.
Perfect. The next question again is for Kevin as well. So
sure.
Is this grant on a percentage basis, e.g. 60% of a total installation cost up to
30%? Yeah.
It's
so that's what 60, you're getting at, yeah.
30%.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Okay,
sorry,
perfect. Yeah, I will be sending a copy of the slides along with all the questions and answers from this Q&A section to all the attendees after this. So I have a question now for David for the renewable heat grant. So what is the 40% based on? Does SEAI kind of have an estimate of these investments by company, including the 40% grant?
Yeah, so the 40% grant, right, that's related to heat pumps, and that would relate to the cost of the heat pump, the market rate. So typically applications that come in through the scheme, they provide like 3 tenders, and depends on the seasonal coefficient of performance of the heat pump on its documentation most of the time. That's how the grant is derived for the whole percentage. So if the heat pump had a COP or a COP of 4, they would be getting 40%. Let's say if the grant, or let's say if the heat pump costs 100,000 and all its related parts, then they would be getting 40,000 of that 100,000. I hope that answers that question, I think.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just going through, there's a lot of questions here and I know we're over time. So if there's any that we don't get to right now, I will be, as I said, following up with everyone directly after. Again, it's just a question on solar PV, Kevin. This person invested in solar panels last year and they just want to know, can they find out if their provider is filled in the NC7 correctly, as they can't see they're getting any payment for electricity? Is there a way to check that?
They're not getting their grant payment, is that?
They want
that
to
what they've
know
said?
if their provider filled out the NC7 form correctly.
Well, we can certainly check that. I mean, it's just a matter of giving us the application number, and I can dig that out. That's not really difficult to check. So if that
Okay.
delegate would like to give those details to you, and then I can do some work on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah. I can
Perfect.
check if that's been submitted. No problem.
Great. And I have a question for Nicoline, hopefully. Is the lifespan of batteries, how much does a new battery cost, and how are they kind of how long do they usually last? Is that kind of a very situational question that I've just thrown at you?
It probably is.
Yeah.
The lifespan of the batteries have hugely increased. But of course, because the batteries coming out now, we don't really know what the lifespan of them are. What is really positive is a lot of the vehicles do come with a very high battery warranty on them. I think they were even higher than with normal cars. I think they're up to 8 years. So it's very difficult to say what the lifespan of the battery is, but it's a lot of years. I don't have a definitive number, but it's not something. I know there is a lot of stories out there that's an issue, but it's not something that we have come across as an issue, especially as it's increasing and all the warranties that are out there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perfect. I have one or two questions for Brian as well. So Brian, we're just question here is, what is the typical interest rate charged on the loans? Even just a range would be helpful. You're on mute, Brian.
Beg your pardon. They're very competitive. They could vary from lender to lender, but they would be probably in around 5%.
5%. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And another question is, can transport companies, like hauliers or coach companies, qualify for these grants? For from the Strategic Banking Corporation?
Yeah, so they're loans. So they can apply, and they're, for the ones that fall under green, there are certain measures that they have to meet, but there are some heavy trucks available now that you can finance. So that is there. But obviously other things, if they want to put solar on top of their depots, whatever, that's all, of course, there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I don't see any new questions coming in, or maybe they're just not loading. But I am conscious that we have gone over time. So as I said, I will be following up with everyone with an FAQ sheet to answer all these questions. So just want to say thank you again to all our panelists today. Thank you for everyone for attending. Again, we hope you found this to be beneficial and informative, and I will be following up with everyone with a copy of the slides and the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.